Greetings, love magnets. Greetings, love warriors. Greetings, love icons. I'm so excited to get into this topic with you guys tonight. We are talking about him-barrassing. Him-barrassing. Is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? This conversation is based on a article in British Vogue by this title, Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing Now? And the author of this article did something that I thought was genius. Genius. She based the article on conversations with women who are actually in relationships. Greetings, greetings, Zena Electra. Thank you for joining us. So, you guys, I really want you guys to get involved with this conversation with me and give me your comments. What are your thoughts on this? Whether or not you've read the article, just, the thought itself is having a boyfriend embarrassing. Okay. So, before we get into this, really quickly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Pangia Northstar. I am a Reiki healer, a sound therapist, an energy reader, a teacher, and I love to talk about love. I love to talk about love. Always coming to you, talking to you about some aspect of attracting the love and the life that you truly desire. Okay, and we talk about this from an energetic perspective. Um, Utilizing the laws of attraction. Okay. So the article, Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing Now, explored um, something very interesting that's happening in our society, which is women hiding, hiding who they're in a relationship with, not, not posting the boyfriend or, downplaying the importance of their relationship in their life. And maybe even actually placing less importance on the relationship in their life. And I wanted to start with recognizing that this article was written from a very heteronormative perspective, but I want everybody to stay engaged with this conversation in the way that we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how this can pertain to men or women, okay? And just is being all about your relationship. Is that embarrassing now? Okay, so y'all, what are some of the reasons that having a boyfriend may now feel embarrassing or cringeworthy from a spiritual perspective? Okay, we're going to talk about this today from a spiritual perspective. And one thing that was introduced, a term that was new to me, that was introduced to me through this article, was the term heterofatalism. Heterofatalism. Okay, so this article is talking about widespread heterofatalism. So, what is heterofatalism? Let's go ahead and get that definition out of the way, okay, so that we can all be on the same page here. So, heterofatalism is a term describing the outlook of straight women who feel a sense of resignation or pessimism about their dating lives. The dating lives with men often characterized by repeated disappointment and a feeling that their desires for serious relationships are likely to remain unmet. Okay. It stems from the frustration of pursuing men who are perceived as emotionally unavailable or unwilling to commit, leading to a mood of weary disappointment, though the desire for men may not disappear entirely. Okay. The term is an evolution of the term heteropessimism and highlights the feeling of being burdened by heterosexuality itself. Woo! Wow. That's deep, right? That's deep. The feeling burdened by heterosexuality itself. My goodness. Okay, so I just want to start with this observation right here. If you are feeling burdened by heterosexuality, or burdened by anything that is natural to you, that is a natural fit for you, then perhaps you've allowed someone else, something else, to define how that should look for you or how that should play out in your life. Okay. And we're gonna talk about this from that perspective tonight. Okay. So if you guys can just relate to that idea of feeling burdened by heterosexuality, feeling disappointed by your relationships, um, and let's just say burdened by relationships. Period. It didn't have to be heterosexuality, right? You could be experiencing something like this same type of feeling in a same sex relationship, right? Obviously, as well as men can also feel disappointed and burdened by their experiences that they've had in relationships with women, and burdened by their desire to have a relationship with a woman, and feeling like, that desire is probably going to remain unmet. Okay, because we are hearing these same types of sentiments on both sides. We can't ignore that. Okay, that, it's not really fair or realistic to ignore that. Okay, but I want to talk about this first, you guys, from a third eye perspective. But before we get into that, drop a comment if you can just relate to that idea, to that feeling of being disappointed by your experiences with relationships. Okay, drop a comment, or if you're here live, put some fire in the chat if you've been having like disappointing experiences in your relationships, right? A lot of people can relate to that. Okay. I've certainly experienced disappointment in relationships in my life. I mean, I'm not in any way immune to this. Okay. And we're talking about this from a spiritual perspective tonight, because no matter how spiritual you are not like, excused from having disappointments in relationships. Real life things are still going to happen to you or happen for you, right? That's still a part of life. Okay. So looking at this first from a third eye chakra perspective, okay, we are talking about seeing through the illusion, right? The illusion of generations of tradition that have been instilled in us, in terms of how a relationship should look, what a relationship should change in your life, how this should be played out in your life, the roles that should be played in relationships. Okay, so what's happening when we look at the big picture is a widespread disillusionment with what has been handed to us in terms of the definitions of relationships. Okay. So that illusion is starting to break up. That illusion is starting to fall apart, right? It has been falling apart for a few generations now, but we're just now starting to really talk openly about it. But it's been falling apart for quite some time. Okay. So people are starting to want more than what they've been told they can get out of a relationship, or what a relationship is supposed to be, as well as people are starting to define for themselves what a relationship should be, as well as people are starting to find meaning for their own lives and purpose within their own lives before finding their person, right? Before finding that someone special. And it has been taught to us and ingrained and instilled, we've been programmed with the idea that your life really doesn't begin until you find that someone special. And people are starting to realize that that is not necessarily true. It doesn't have to be true. It doesn't need to be true. And that really may not be a healthy perspective, right? Because If you are not happy with your life, if you're not feeling fulfilled in your life, if your life does not have purpose, getting into a relationship is not going to fix that, right? No one else is responsible for making your life meaningful, okay? Making your life meaningful. That's that's our responsibility to do that. It's our responsibility to find purpose and to find joy and to have peace and then share those things with a partner. If you connect with somebody that doesn't really have peace and joy and purpose in their life, it won't be long before you discover that, right? And you it won't be long before that becomes a problem in your relationship, right? Because that person is going to soon become disillusioned with you because you have not managed to make them happy. You have not managed to add fulfillment and purpose to their life. And that's actually a lot of pressure to put on a relationship. Like I personally, I don't want to be somebody's everything. I don't want to be somebody's reason for living. That is a lot of pressure. Right? If you can relate to that, give me some fire in the chat. Like, does that just sound like a bit much? That's a lot. That's a lot. And if you are the person who doesn't have the peace and the joy and the meaning in their own life, and then you connect with somebody, once you get past that fresh, lovey dovey, butterfly phase where everything is new and exciting, it won't be long. It won't be long at all before you're finding yourself, dissatisfied, disenchanted, with that person because that person is only human. That person is flawed. That person can't be your everything, right? You can't like breathe their air. Like, you got to have something that you are that anchors you within yourself and within your own life, or you're gonna soon be disappointed with that other person. Okay, it's just the way it is, guys. We can't find the reason for living in someone else, but this is especially if you are over 30. If you are over 30, maybe 35, but especially if you're over 30, you've grown up with that conditioning and all these romanticized ideas from Hollywood and social media and all of that, that, if I just had a person, then everything, my life would magically be wonderful, right? Not, not true. That's not how that works. Okay. So seeing beyond that illusion and seeing that it is your responsibility and your job and your purpose is to find meaning of your own life and your own reason for being here and to anchor in that within yourself. Seeing that is really high level spiritual work. Okay, it's really high level spiritual work, and people will, you know maybe kind of look at you a little weird or think that, oh, maybe you just, you're down on relationships, or maybe you're just, suffering from whatever disappointment you had when you speak that way. When you're engaged, highly engaged with yourself and the meaning of your life above and beyond a relationship. People may call you jaded, right? But really and truly, that's not it at all. It's quite healthy to be happy with yourself and have your own sense of adventure, and then choose a relationship that's good for you from there. Okay, so let's move on. Let's talk about, this is a perfect segue into solar plexus energy, looking at this from a perspective of solar plexus energy. Okay, and what we're talking about here with the solar plexus energy is dropping the comparisons about relationships, like, you know, discontinuing comparing your relationships to the fantasies about relationships that simply feed your ego. Okay? Ooh, what do I mean by that? Our relationship fantasies are often just that, fantasies that feed our ego, that tell us, oh, once you get in a relationship, you're not going to have to work hard anymore. Maybe you're telling yourself something like that because you're working hard and, in a career that you really don't like, or struggling to make ends meet. So then from there, you proceed to compare every relationship that you have been in or that you get in to some relationship that you've seen. And if you think about it, it's rarely a relationship that you've actually witnessed in real life. It's most often something you saw in a movie, on a TV show, or something somebody's posting on social media, somebody's highlight reels of their relationship, right? So you're telling yourself, this problem that I have in my life will be resolved if I can just find the right relationship, right? So a lot of times, and this is really common, um, it's common with us as women, but I've also experienced this as a woman, and I'll tell you a bit about that experience in a minute. But a lot of times as women, we are told that, a man is going to come along and, solve all your financial problems, take you out of any financial discomfort that you're experiencing. And that may or may not happen, right? And if that does happen, is that always safe? A lot of times, um, abusers are also using finances to keep you trapped, right? That is a common thing that someone who is controlling and abusive will do, is to get you in a situation where you are financially dependent on them. Okay? That financial control, financial abuse is actually on the power and control wheel, which is a tool used in domestic violence trainings to teach people about, the characteristics of domestic violence. That's a huge component, is making a person financially dependent, right? And a lot of times this is something that is done, if you're out here looking for somebody that's just going to change your financial situation and you're willing to allow someone to do that for you very quickly, sometimes they're doing that as a means of gaining control. And sometimes that person will not, whip out their most abusive behavior until they've got you financially dependent. So you really could be setting yourself up for a bad situation. Okay. You may be comparing yourself or your relationship to something you've seen where somebody, is always receiving flowers and always, getting taken out on dates, or somebody, that's got a big old rock on their finger and just received this huge diamond or this, beautiful piece of jewelry from someone. Let me tell you something. So, as you know, I'm an energy healer. I'm an energy reader. I do readings for people. I do Reiki for people. But I've also been in the beauty industry for 20 years. Okay. So I also have a salon, and um, people talk to their hairstylist, right? People talk to their hairstylist as though we are their therapists. Okay. So I've had a unique opportunity in both careers to really observe human behavior and observe relationships. Okay. And I cannot tell you the amount of times I've seen these big old rocks, these big old diamonds, these beautiful necklaces, right? Or these houses, beautiful houses and cars, as an apology for something awful that that partner has done. Okay. So I just want to, I'm saying that to say, no, I don't envy anybody's, I'm sorry, I cheated diamond. I don't envy anybody's, I'm sorry, I cheated BMW, right? Like a lot of times there are things that you're just seeing on the surface and you don't really know what's happening behind the closed that closed door. Okay? You don't know what's happening behind the scenes in that relationship. If you've ever witnessed anything like that, give me some fire in the chat or drop a comment if you're watching this later. Okay? We've all seen it, you know, and that person may be posting on social media, ooh, look at my ring, look at my necklace, look at my car, look at this beautiful house. My man bought for me. But in reality, if you knew that person personally, you would know they went through some horrible stuff to get that, right? And I'm not saying that's always the case. I'm not by any means saying that's always the case. Okay. But these are some of the reasons why people are feeling embarrassed about having a boyfriend, posting a relationship. Yes, I see the comment. That is sad, right? That's sad. But sometimes we're comparing in our minds our relationship to something else out there that's not even real. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've known people, men or women, that are posting all this beautiful, lovely, oh, I love my wife, I love my husband, this is my best friend, y'all, that did da 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 for me. And you know, the police were just at the house last night. The police, the police, 911 was at their house last night because they was in there fighting about to kill each other. Okay. So there are illusions and fantasies that we are comparing our relationships to. And that can make you feel embarrassed about being open about, you know, with your relationship, or hesitant to be, you know, proud and out with your relationship. Okay. And, you know, this is also kind of bringing up another um, concern for me, which I'll, which we're going to talk about that from a heart chakra perspective, okay, which is love shaming. Love shaming. Okay, are we entering an era of love shaming? I mean, it's starting to look like it, guys. What do y'all think? Are we entering an era of love shaming? Right? And is that really where we want to be? You know, I don't think that love shaming is something that we need to, oh, I don't want to say start. I'm going to say continue because it's already been going on. It's already been going on. I'll give you a perfect example. Um, for a long time, it's been a thing that guys will be embarrassed if they're in love, right? And they don't want their friends, they don't want the homies to know that they're in love and how affectionate they are with their woman, right? They don't want their friends to know that they really love and really care about a woman, and that's perceived as weak. So now this article coming out, and you know, the article is really just putting on Front Street something that's this undercurrent that's already been going on, right? Because we've had the decenter men movement going on for years now, right? It's been a thing for a minute. You got the 4B movement, you know, going on, which seems like the woman's version of love shaming. Love shaming. Y'all, something about that doesn't seem right to me, right? Yes, I see the comment. Judgment is old world, right? So it's really not for us to judge whether or not someone else needs to, you know, be in love. or whether or not they should be proud to be in a relationship, right? So I think we're starting to uncover some answers, right? I personally, I don't think just having a boyfriend is embarrassing, but playing yourself, betraying yourself to have to get to keep a boyfriend or a girlfriend, a wife, a husband for that matter, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing. Okay. And you know, I think we all need to kind of just sit and evaluate, the meaning and the role of relationships in your life. And are we just telling ourselves that that is the only thing missing in our lives? And I really don't, I can't imagine a situation where that really is true. That the only thing missing from your life is having a relationship. Okay. And I'm going to give you an example of what I said earlier that I experienced this where I met a guy, and on the surface, the guy seemed great. Okay. Like awesome. He had, a lot of things in place. And when we met, he wanted to be sure to let me know that. Right. He's telling me about, his career and his retirement package and his home and his car and his achievements and all this stuff. And it became clear pretty early on that he wanted to make sure that I knew that he was together, you know? So he had, all his ducks in a row. And he said to me, all I'm missing is a woman in my life, right? And I was like, okay, just like, okay, but the more and more he talked about it, each time he said it, I felt more and more like sick and like smothered and like this is not going to work because he already had everything in his life planned out. And it was giving me this, I'm a very visual person. And even like the intuitive messages I receive a lot of times come with the image, right? With a visual image in my mind's eye. And this comments are funny. Oh my gosh. Just says first name Charlie, last name Wilson. If you know, you know. Yes. It reminds me of the song, right? Of the Charlie Wilson song. So, yeah, I started getting this visual image of like a puzzle. When you're putting together like a jigsaw puzzle and the whole puzzle was put together, except for there was one piece missing. Just one. And I thought to myself, oh my God, he expects me to just fit into that one little empty space. And that was not a good feeling. That was not a good feeling at all. Because I'm like, man, I know what a dynamic person that I am, right? I know what a multifaceted person that I am. And I don't want to just neatly fit into something, that somebody else already has all figured out and laid out in their life. That just it seemed very restrictive to me. And I did not like that idea. I like the idea of partnering with someone and we figure some things out together and see what's going to suit us based on us, right? Not trying to fit into somebody's life that already has everything all planned out, right? Now, with that being said, it reminded me of something I saw on social media a few years back before I really curated my social media and unfollowed a lot of the like gender wars, conversations and those types of channels and pages. So it was a guy saying that he, did not like it when he heard a woman say that all that was missing from her life was a man. right? And at the time, I wasn't quite sure why that bothered him, and I don't know if it just was that he wasn't doing a great job of explaining that, or if there was some type of backdrop. I think this was they were talking about how women, when women say, I don't need a man, I just want a man, and how that made them feel, because the men on this particular podcast had a high need to feel needed, right? So that's a whole nother topic, right? Whole other topic that perhaps we could talk about sometimes. But I say all that to say that you really it's very important to unplug from the comparisons. Okay? Unplug from the comparisons and know what is going to be suitable, what's going to be reasonable, and what's going to be pleasing to you in your life, and stand on that. Stand on that. You know, Make a choice that's in alignment with that. Because if you have made a choice in a person who is in alignment with what you have determined through getting to know yourself thoroughly, having a strong sense of yourself, right? And taking an honest inventory of your life and your personality and who you are, and things that, are not likely to change at all, or things are not likely to change anytime soon. If you take an honest inventory of those things, what it is that you love about your life, if you've taken time to build a life that you love, and then you choose someone who is in alignment with that, what do you have to be embarrassed of? What do you have to be embarrassed of? Right? Stop comparing to this fantasy that's out there, that's might be, that's maybe suitable for someone else. We really don't even know. Because like I said, people are only posting their highlight reels of their life and their relationship. Right? So that's just a little food for thought there. Okay. So from a solar plexus perspective. Okay. Ask yourself some questions, right? I hear a lot of women talking about, men that are not, I don't say, well, I guess it's okay way to say it. Men who are not, you know, taking the lead, or not able to lead a woman anywhere, and not, they don't have vision for their life and stuff like that. Well, is that, I, yes, I understand, wanting someone that has some type of vision, like we talked about earlier, purpose and meaning to their life. But is someone coming into your life and taking the lead, is that really going to suit you? When you're a grown woman that has been, you're happy with the way you've been leading your own life so far, is that really going to work? Right? Are you really, to allow someone to take the lead? That means you have to be, you got to follow. It's following something that you're good at and looking forward to, for real. For real. Does that old model suit you? Think about that, right? Are you going to suddenly become someone who is passive or submissive just because this new person came into your life? And furthermore, if they fell in love with you as the version of yourself that you are today, a strong, capable, confident person, and this can go for a man too, right? If you begin to change to the point that, you're no longer leading your own life, are they still going to be enchanted with? Are they still going to adore that version of you? Or are they going to wake up and go, who are you one day? Are they going to wake up and not recognize this person you've turned into, because you've morphed into this version of yourself that you think that they wanted you to be, because of your pre-programming in your mind, that told you that when a man comes into your life, okay, now everything's on him. He's in charge now. Think about that. I've seen that happen, right? Sometimes we change, we get in a relationship and change into who we've been told that we're supposed to be in a relationship, and that's not the version of you that that person fell in love with. And what happens when you? I mean, do you want to fall in love with someone? Would you want to fall in love with someone that was expecting you to change into someone else? Just some thoughts, you guys. Just some thoughts. Okay. Now, are the changes that you want to make something that the part of the changes that you do want to make in your life? Right. It's just another question. Are the changes that you do want to make in your life something that a partnership really can shift for you? Or are they changes only you can or should make or determine for yourself? Will partnership really shift what it is you really want to change in your life? Or is that something that you should be shifting for yourself and then perhaps sharing that with a partner? Hmm. Greetings, Miss Fortitude. Greetings. Based on your lived experiences, is another question. Based on your lived experiences, and I'm talking about an honest inventory of your lived experiences in which you are taking accountability for your part in what actually happened too. Okay. Based on your lived experiences, would it actually be safe to make such changes in your life based on having a partner? Hmm. That kind of takes us back to what we were talking about earlier. That, if you're out here looking for someone that's going to change your financial situation, if you really, looking more for help than you're looking for love, you can mess around and trap yourself, right? Because when someone comes along who's looking for an opportunity to control your life and control you, you know, are you putting yourself in a very vulnerable or unsafe position? Mm-hmm. Zena says the lifestyles and the values must fit. Yes. Yes. See, if you want a certain lifestyle, but you don't have your values solidified, right? If, like, let's say you want this upper echelon lifestyle, but you don't have such values in place, such as I value my voice, I value my ability to express myself and to be my real self. And, I want to be with someone with whom I can be my real self and keep intact the parts of my life that I love that help me to remain centered and grounded in who I am. If you don't have those values intact, it's very easy to get caught up in a crazy situation just because somebody, you know, bought you some gifts, put you in a house, right? I've lived that experience, you guys. I've lived that experience in my younger years, right? Twice, actually, in my marriage and then later in a relationship. I was with someone that upgraded my lifestyle. Didn't care whether I worked or not. But guess what? I didn't have freedom. I lost my freedom. I lost my voice in those situations, right? So could that happen now? No, no, because I'm not, I value my peace. I value my freedom and my voice and my self-respect above anything, right? So there are certain things I would no longer compromise. 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 Think about that Eartha Kitt meme. There's certain things I will not, I won't compromise, right? And my freedom and my voice and being able to live a life that I love that keeps me grounded, those are things that I love. And I'm not going to change that for anybody or anything. Okay? So now we talked about the third eye perspective, seeing beyond the illusion. We talked about the solar plexus, dropping the comparison to fantasies that feed your ego. We talked about it from a heart chakra perspective. Love shaming. You know, we don't want to love shame, you guys. If you really have real love in your life, go for that. Go with it, right? Go with it. And also love shaming can also take the form of, you know, a lot of women, you hear a lot of talk about it within the decenter men movement about loving yourself, right? And then you'll have a lot of people that respond to that by saying, oh, you're just bitter, you're just jaded, you just hate men, you just can't get a man. So, that's why you're talking about loving yourself. Well, you know what? That person that responds that way absolutely cannot be having an experience of self love. Absolutely not. Because if they were experiencing love from within themselves, they would totally get it and would not be seeking to shame you about that and turn it into something it's not. Which is takes me to another thing that I want to talk to related to the heart chakra perspective on this. Okay, and I know we're going a little bit out of order. I just threw the heart chakra in there. I didn't have that one written down. But listen, here's part of the problem of why this article is even a thing. Okay, why there's even a discussion to be had. Okay, why is there even a discussion to be had about this? Is having a boyfriend embarrassing? Okay, a lot of what is being experienced largely by women, but also some by men. I cannot forget the men because it's not fair to paint all men with the same brush, right? And when I talk to men, I hear men saying a lot of the same things that women are saying. They may be saying the exact same words, or they may be saying different words, but with the same meaning behind it. Okay. So, for example, I have a friend. Ooh, I got more than one friend actually that has always dated and married mean women. Mean women. Okay? Mean women. And they gravitate towards that. Right? um and we've talked about this openly. Like, man, you like mean women. That abuse somehow is getting you hooked, right? But look, okay, so from the love shaming perspective, the heart chakra perspective, I want to say this. Here's something else that's happening within relationships, and the reason that this is even a conversation to be had. A lot of men, and a lot of women too, but a lot of men are extremely self-loathing. Self-loathing. They do not love themselves. Okay? And if you don't remember anything else from this video, remember this. Remember this. Someone who does not love themselves cannot reciprocate your love, sweetie. They can't do it. They can't do it. Someone who does not love themselves cannot participate in a loving relationship with you because they are not having a loving relationship with themselves. And if you fall in love with them and you're showering them with all this affection and trust, right? All this adoration, and they don't love themselves, they're thinking, How dumb are you? You can't see what I really am, right? So that person, in most cases, they're gonna do one of two things. They're either gonna push you away, they're gonna keep you at a distance, and a lot of times that's why you're getting all this, I'm not ready for a relationship, I'm not ready for a commitment crap, right? That's real common, right? Coming from grown-ups, adults, adults, 30s, 40s, 50s, talking about you're not ready, right? They're either going to give you that and push you away, or they may also take advantage and get everything they can get out of you before you wake up and realize that they have no intention of reciprocating your love. Okay? So, one of the top things to look for in a partner that's not going to embarrass you, right? A partner that you can proudly, openly claim and have a real relationship, a two-way reciprocal relationship with, is someone that loves themselves. Look for signs of self-hate. Yep, been there. I see the comment. Yep, been there. Been there. Right? This ought to be making sense to anybody that's been around for a little while. Right? Give me some fire. Give me some comments if this makes sense to you. Somebody who does not love themselves, who is not capable of making decisions that are good for themselves simply because that decision is good for themselves. That person is not going to be able to reciprocate your love and be a full participant in the relationship. Okay? That's just, another little thing from a heart chakra perspective. Okay? Just, something to think about. Okay? And if you struggle with making decisions that are good for you simply because they are what's best for you, then, perhaps, perhaps you got a little something, a little digging to do. Take a little time to develop more love for yourself, right? Which is a perfect segue to our next point from a sacral chakra perspective, which is self-acceptance. Self-acceptance, right? Do you have a realistic view of your mental and emotional landscape and truly accept who you are? Right? Truly accept who you are. Are you realistic with yourself about who you really are? Okay? And if so, wouldn't that help you to have a reasonable amount, a proper amount of grace for your partner? Okay? So for example, let's say you know for a fact that you struggle with anxiety or depression, right? You know this. This is something that you've accepted about yourself. It's something you're working on, you're addressing, but you're definitely being like realistic with yourself about that. Like, man, sometimes I get anxious, sometimes I get down, and perhaps I'm not the easiest to be around when I'm in that state, right? Here's what it looks like when I'm in that state. I don't do this, I don't do that. I don't want to cook. I don't want to, maybe you don't want to clean up your house sometimes, or whatever the case may be, right? Or you have things that you do that are annoying. Like, say you become obsessive about how clean everything is, or that you become obsessive about controlling other factors in your life when you feel out of control in this area of your life, right? Like, say you have a job that you hate. I hate this job, but I'm sticking with the job anyway because it pays well, right? But when I'm feeling out of control in this area, in this job that I hate, I tend to get obsessive and controlling about other things, about how things in the house look, or, how other people around me are doing what they're doing. I start trying to control other people when I feel out of control for myself. Are you, realistic with yourself about that. Okay? If you are, when you become introspective and accountable, right? Honest with yourself about your stuff, it helps you to have grace for other people and their stuff and stop looking for perfection in other people that you don't possess for yourself. Because when you see that other person and their ways in which they compensate or self-soothe starting to pop up, perhaps you can look at that and go, I recognize that. That's their version of what I do when I get that way, right? Because it's probably not going to look pretty to you. It's probably not going to look pretty to you. But if you're in denial about your stuff, it's really easy to reject and push other people away because of their stuff, right? But when you're open and honest about your stuff, especially if you're open and honest with your partner about your stuff, then it makes it easy to have that conversation like, hey, babe, you know, I, notice you know, you're acting a little different today. You're doing that thing that I hate, you know? Is it possible that you do that when you feel this? Similar to how I do this when I feel that, right? I don't know, y'all. Just some things to think about, okay? Just some things to think about, okay? Now, what are some other reasons? I'm gonna give one last reason. And this could also go along with the sacral chakra perspective, okay? What could be a reason that it could be embarrassing to have a boyfriend right now or a partner right now, to be, seen with somebody, out with somebody? Maybe deep down, that you're actually at a point in your life where it's important for you to kind of be by yourself and get to know yourself for a while before dedicating and committing yourself to a whole relationship. Okay? And I'm talking about a phase in your life. I'm not talking about, just overall, avoiding, being afraid of commitment because, of whatever, something, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about maybe you're at a phase in your life, a time in your life where there's a legitimate reason why it's important for you to reacquaint yourself with yourself for a while and really come to appreciate that, right? Because I think that it's always very important to do before getting into a relationship. And if you are, recently divorced or, recently breaking up from a long-term relationship that maybe wasn't marriage, but, a long-term commitment, and you feel deep down that maybe I need to reacquaint myself with myself for a while. That's a real thing. That's a real thing. And that's okay. That's totally fine. No shame. Okay? No shame at all about that. All right? Because like we said at the very beginning of this conversation, it's your responsibility to find your own joy, to find your own peace, to be in touch with your own, meaning for life before committing. Right? Maybe, you've been parenting for the last 20, 30 years, and, your kids just grew up and left the house. And you're trying to figure out who you are now. That's a legitimate reason, right? It may feel weird and you may not be able to identify why, but it may feel kind of weird, kind of embarrassing, kind of cringy to just throw yourself into someone else. Maybe you're changing careers right now. Maybe there's just some major transition that really requires you to be in touch with you a little more deeply. Maybe something has been unearthed. Some major things have been rearranged in your life. Okay, that's an important time to get to know you and to redefine what your happiness looks like. And it can be difficult to do that while trying to establish a new happy with someone else. Okay? So, if you can relate to these things, and this has helped you to think about this conversation a little bit deeper, give me some fire in the chat. Drop some comments when you watch this later. Let me know, what do you think? Is it embarrassing to be all about your partner and to be public with your relationship, right, before marriage? Because I think it's significant that this article was talking about boyfriends and not husbands. Okay, but because that's a whole other conversation. Mm. So, you guys, thank you so much for participating in this conversation with me and for staying to the end of the video. Um, we've got some really good like follow-up content for this on the app, The Elemental Soul, which I am a content creator for. We've got one called 777 Chakra Activation. We've got another one called Energetic Sovereignty. And these guided journeys really help you to do just what I was talking about. Being in touch with yourself from the perspective of each chakra and deciding what is really good for you, regardless of what's trending, right? Because it's hard to be embarrassed when you believe in what you're doing and when you are doing what you're doing, whether it's being single or being in a relationship or getting married or divorcing. It's hard to feel embarrassed when what you're doing really is the right thing for you. Okay? Is it embarrassing to have a boyfriend? Maybe. Is it embarrassing to betray yourself? Always. All right. I love you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. I will see you next time on Attracting Love Energy. Peace and blessings.